Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. Welcome to UNSW. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're meeting here today on the traditional lands of the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are joining us today. My name is Claire Annesley, and I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Design and Architecture, or ADA. The vision that we have for the faculty is that through creativity, collaboration, and inclusion, we seek and solve problems to improve life on Earth. We would love you to join us to help us fulfill this very ambitious vision. The degrees that we offer give you the knowledge and skills, the flexibility and the support to design the future that you want, to help you make the impact on the world that you want to have. But we're here right now to hear from Bruce Mao. It is my great pleasure and an extreme honor to welcome Bruce and to introduce him very quickly to you. Bruce is a Canadian, Chicago-based visionary designer who, over 40 years of design practice, has collaborated with global brands, universities, leading cultural organizations, heads of state, renowned architects, and generally fellow optimists across the world on an impressive range of projects. His mission is to design change at scale, massive change. And to that end, he developed 24 principles for massive change. That's his roadmap. His work is ambitious, optimistic, and inspirational, and that's why I love it so much. Bruce and his life partner, Bisi Williams, are also academics at UNSW. And for the month of September, they are here with us to work on a project, a collaboration that we have with them called Massive Action Sydney. We're working together across the month of September to mobilize the massive action that's needed to drive the massive change that we need in this world, and how to do that at scale and also at pace. And today we have the great honor to be hearing Bruce talk about one of his 24 principles of massive change. And it's one that is so relevant for UNSW Open Day today. It is design your life, work on what you love. As Dean of Arts, Design and Architecture, I particularly like this principle. It's one of my favorites of the 24, because I do work on what I love. And as you make your choices in life about universities and what you want to study, you will get loads of advice. And today, my advice to you is listen to Bruce and never lose sight of doing what it is that you love. Thank you. Bruce, over to you.
Thank you, Claire. I want to begin also with land acknowledgement, to acknowledge the Bidjigal people that are the traditional custodians of this land. I'd also like to pay my respects to the elders, both past and present, and extend that respect to other First Nations people and the Torres Strait Islanders who are present here today. Design your life, work on what you love. As Claire said, this is one of the 24 principles. And frankly, for a long time, we weren't convinced that it was really a principle of the MC24. We thought it was really maybe a little too soft. But over time, we realized it maybe is the most important one. that ultimately that idea that we align our passion and our production, our work and our love, is maybe the most important decision that we need to make in life. And then all the other decisions really kind of flow from that. If you can make that one first alignment, where you're really doing what you love, all the other things become easier and become kind of more practical. So I want to talk about that really as the kind of central part of our work. First of all, I want to welcome you and thank you for coming out, for kind of being here and really thinking about your future and your contribution to the world. I think learning is maybe the most important contribution that a human can make to their society. And this is a picture of our family. Bisi Williams and I have 3 quite extraordinary daughters. So we've been through this process that you're going through 3 times. We're still in it, actually. We have 3 girls partway through university. And it seems to us that we will always be partway through university. In fact, our first daughter, when she was going into it, the first time, all the pressure kind of, goes down on the first child. And she came down one night. I was working late. She came downstairs to my office and said, I just can't do it. I can't do it. I can't understand what will make you guys happy. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I just don't know what to choose that will make you and Mom happy. And I said, what does that matter? Why would you choose something that make us happy? I don't care about that. I don't care what you decide. You have to decide for you. It's plain that my job is very clear. My job is to support you in whatever you want, whatever you decide to do. I'm gonna support you. I'm gonna do everything I possibly can to make that happen. And she said, really? It doesn't matter to you what it is? I said, not in the least. I've made my choices. Why would your choices be my choices? This is about you. You're going to design your life. You're going to design the choices for you. You have to decide what's going to make you happy, not me. Whether you do the right, right university or not is not going to make me happy. It's going to make you happy. And I think that's such an important lesson, and really what this is all about. And design, in a sense, is that kind of thinking. It's really thinking about, what is the future state? What are we trying to accomplish? And how do we get there? That's at its core. That's what a design methodology really is all about. So I want to ask, first of all, how many designers? Just show of hands. How many designers are in the house today? So there's a few, half a dozen or so. How many of you are on Instagram? Oh, quite a few more. How many of you are on TikTok? Uh-huh. How many of you threw a party this year? Uh-huh. Now, let's ask again, how many designers are in the house? If you threw a party, if you're on TikTok, if you're on Instagram, all of those things are design things. So any of those things where you're actually creating something, where you're doing something, when you have something that you want to do in a specific way, not a random way, as soon as you have a specific intention, you're a designer. Now the question is, are you a good designer? Do you have the design tools to get what you want, to get the results that you want? And that's really what we're here for. So what is design? How can we define design? When you think about all the design applications across, what Dean Ansley was talking about, all the different kind of applications across the spectrum that have design as a kind of common denominator. What is that common denominator? It's intention. It's really that ability to kind of say, I want something specific, and I don't accept random outcomes. And that kind of moment of bifurcation, I like to say that the world really bifurcates. It's either random, accidental, or by design. You either accept, okay, I'm going to accept whatever happens, or I want a specific outcome. And the moment you say, I don't accept random, I don't accept accidental, I want specific, you become a designer. So it's really a way to create change because you want something that isn't already there. Whatever that is, it might be a lamp, it might be a product, it might be a system, it might be a party. It might be a TikTok, it might be a tweet, it might be something on some other platform. Design is the ability to envision and realize a better future. That's really the kind of core practice. Design ultimately is power. If you think about if you have the power to shape the future, if you have the ability to say, I can envision a future and I can help people to go to that future, it's an absolutely extraordinary power. And it's one of the things that I discovered in my own capacity, in my own career path, is that I started as a graphic designer, but over time I developed an ability to realize, wow, I can actually visualize the future. And Simon Sinek, is someone who talks about how important it is that a vision is visual. And designers have that magical ability to create that vision, to actually envision things, to inspire people to move to that new place. So we have this extraordinary power at the core of the practice. And when you think about your life, you live a designed life. We live inside of our design. We live in a designed world. We live in a designed environment. We live inside of designed products and experiences. Almost your entire world is not a natural world. It's a designed world. You live in these kinds of environments. You think about the kind of design of health and medical, how powerful that is in determining your life experience. Energy and movement, all design. Right? The way that you move around, the energy that you use, even though it's mostly invisible to you, it's all been designed to be invisible. Urban life, the city ultimately is the kind of greatest design synthesis of all the other forms of design. All those other, all the other product designs, system design, all those things come together in your urban experience, and that all comes together as the kind of place of your life that is happening. Even leisure and travel is more and more about design. It's more and more kind of happening within a kind of designed experience. And even nature itself. And when I first started talking about this, people said, Bruce, you're a megalomaniac, you just want to control everything. It's not about control. It's really, if you look at how we think about nature, where we fail to design, we design for failure. Where we fail to design our presence within nature, we've destroyed it. And what you can see what we're doing now, we're going back and redesigning it so that we can actually live with nature and live in a very different way. So even nature itself is becoming part of this new kind of thinking of design. So if you look at the diagram on the left, that's the old way of thinking of design. It was a subset of business. Business happened in a cultural context and culture within the natural context. What we discovered in our research is that, in fact, business, culture, and even nature are now design projects. And as I said, where we fail to design, we design for failure. If you look at the LA River in Los Angeles, it once was an ecology. It was a river. They turned it into a ditch. They paved it. The whole thing is concrete today. They're now in the process of turning it back into an ecology that works at a higher level of sophistication. So that means that we're now in the business, we're now in the kind of domain of designing business, culture, and nature, and really that's where you come in. The opportunity in your life is that these whole new domains become part of your life possibility. Does that all make sense? Am I making sense here? So I want to talk a little bit about how I got to that and to do that. I was born in northern Canada. on a farm outside of a mining town in about 6 hours north of Toronto. And in this place, this is our farm. We had the last farm on the left, as you can see. And it was the end of the road in more ways than one. Beyond our house was hundreds of miles of forest. I mean, there was almost nothing between there and the North Pole. And I didn't really discover how remote it was until I Googled it when I went back. But you can see that basically, it's really extreme. And our house was built on a kind of rocky hill, which meant that you couldn't get running water during the wintertime. So my job as a young man was to go to the well in the valley and provide water for the house during the winter months. I had a snowmobile. Every day I would go to the well and provide water. I went to a high school, and I was very proficient at math and science. My grades, I had 100 in electronics. I thought I was going to go into a technical degree, and at the last minute, I decided I wanted to study art. So I went down to the guidance office and I said, I want to go to art school. And they said, it's too late. You should have taken art classes. You have to have a portfolio to get into art school. And as far as we know, you don't have one because you didn't take any classes, or you took the absolute minimum, which I did. And so I said, I'm 16 years old. It can't be too late. There must be other people who have this problem. And they said, well, you can stay an extra year in high school if you go to the next town. They have to accept you. You're going to meet a man named Mr. Smith. He's going to, if he takes you into the program, you're going to stay an extra year in high school, and from there you can apply, which is what I did. And I had the most amazing year of my life. I totally fell in love. I discovered this world, and I never looked back. I just fell in love putting words and images together. I discovered this whole world of design. I became a designer quite by accident. I didn't know what that was. I was kind of really new to it. But that images and words together, it turns out, is graphic design. And I became one. And I started doing books, again, which really became a kind of love of my life. That was the first book I ever did. That led to really extraordinary collaborations. I consider myself probably the most fortunate designer of the last half century. I got to work with people like Frank Gehry, who's one of probably the most famous architect of the last half century. We worked on Walt Disney Concert Hall together. We designed a new museum of biodiversity, the first in the world. I became an author because I needed to do research to understand where the opportunities were to do research. I had to write things down, and in the process, I became an author, and I began to see design as a way of actually expressing my voice. And I think that idea of thinking about design as a kind of voice and a way of actually expressing yourself and your voice and finding your voice is a really critical idea. This is the first thing I really published on my own. It was called An Incomplete Manifesto for Growth. And it wasn't really a manifesto in a kind of heavy political sense. It was a text about what it means to sustain a creative life. What does it take to keep a kind of creative life in the kind of maelstrom of what it means to have a business, a career, and be a designer. Over time, I published what I think of as context projects that are really about the changing world of design, the world around us, and therefore, what are the opportunities? Where could we contribute the most? I did a book with a man named Rem Koolhaas called Small, Medium, Large, Extra Large, that was about the kind of the world of architecture and what it means to dig a hole in the ground and change the world. That led to, again, extraordinary collaborations. This is a project we did in Seattle for the new library system. I worked with the Jets and the Giants to create their new stadium in New York, which was a really wonderful, kind of crazy project. And I was commissioned to design the city of Mecca. And I have to say that if you had met me at the well and said, Bruce, you really should pay attention because you're going to have to design Mecca, I would have said, that's not very likely, and I think you're cracked. But that is exactly what happened. We were commissioned because Mecca, as you can see, is so badly designed. that every year several hundred people get killed there because of the poor design and so many people all at once. And they get crushed in the flow. And so they commissioned us to do a 10-year plan. And our response was to say, look, a 10-year plan isn't going to do it. Let's do a 1,000-year plan, since it is, after all, Mecca. And that will allow us to think long-term and completely change the way that we think about it. Along the way, we did a project called Massive Change. It was really about, how do we think about design and its power to change the world. And the back cover really says it best. It's not about the world of design. It's about the design of the world. It's really about what Claire describes here at the ADA. We started a little school called the Institute Without Boundaries to do it. And it was a project about our power to shape the world and how incredibly optimistic it is, how somehow we're not seeing what's possible. But in fact, we are doing it. So it was designed as an installation, an exhibition, traveling exhibition, and a book and a radio program. And it really changed our lives because we studied a couple hundred of the world's greatest innovators, optimistic innovators, people who were really taking on the toughest challenges in the world and solving them. And what we discovered was that we're in the process of actually redesigning wealth. We're changing how we define and design wealth and creating an entirely new set of possibilities for people all over the world. The whole project was based on this quotation by Arnold Toynbee. And he says it's not about technology and innovation or violence and conflict. That the 20th century, in the long sweep of history, and he was a British historian who wrote a 20-volume history of the world, he says, no, it's actually going to be about how we can think of the welfare of the whole human race as a practical objective. And when he uses the term practical objective, he makes it a design project. And that's really what that project was all about. But I did a kind of presentation like this at a high school in Vancouver where it opened. And a young woman came to the microphone after the presentation. She said, Mr. Mao, I think you're not thinking big enough. And I said, well, tell me more, because people are not saying that about me right now. It's quite the opposite. And she said, well, that was good for the 20th century, but our project is different. It's the 21st century, and we have to think about the welfare of all of life. And that's really what we need to do. He was right for the 20th century, but our project is different. It's really the welfare of all of life. We need to think differently. And she was absolutely right. And that led us to a new way of thinking that we call life-centered design, that really puts life at the center, not humans. And that way of thinking takes you to a completely different place. And that's really what we're working on. So I'm working with a school in my hometown now called the McEwen School. And it's a tricultural project with French, English, and Indigenous leaders. And one of the projects that they do, that the students do, is they go into the forest with an elder, and they make a birch bark canoe. These are architecture students. They go in the forest, they make a birch bark canoe in the way that it's been done for thousands of years. And they do it in a way that, that birch bark canoe, if it gets broken or it just wears out, they simply take it back to the forest and they give it back to the flows of life. It becomes food for the next generation of life. So think about that kind of beautiful, cyclical, useful, just a kind of incredibly beautiful cycle of life that can operate in perpetuity. Right? It never creates a problem. And imagine a generation of architects thinking like that. So that's really what we're doing. And Bisi and I worked for the last 15 years or so to really think through that process and create MC24 and the 24 principles. And I want to talk to you about 3 of those principles right now. The first is first inspire, design is leadership, lead by design. In other words, if you think about the kind of core idea of design, that you have the capacity to inspire. It's not exclusive to some magical class of people. Everyone has it. You have the ability to envision a future and inspire people to go there. And you can learn how to do that. You can do it systematically. It's not a special kind of talent. Anyone can do it. We all have the power to do it. We need to open up to possibility. We have to kind of develop an open mind, and that's a technique that we can learn. We have to declare our purpose and ideals. We need to actually have we need to have the courage to make a declaration, to say we want to do something, we want to go somewhere that's worth going to. And then we have to measure against the purpose and ideals. We have to be willing to measure ourselves against that objective. And that is what leadership is all about. And what you realize is that in the design school, in the design process, you really have a methodology of leadership. And that's really at the core of a design process. The second is sketching, and it's why you all have a notebook and a pen. Did everyone get one of those? Okay. So what we realized was that for so many of us, we've been taught not to do it. We've been taught that we can't do it. But as soon as you were vertical, as soon as you were able to sit up, and your mom put a crayon in your hand, you did this. And you thought you were a superstar, because you could make marks that looked like mom. And you drew a picture of mom. You thought it was awesome, and so did she. And she put it on the fridge, and it was spectacular. And you had the ability to create things from the very, very first moment. We eventually taught you that you can't, that you weren't doing it right. That happened to us. Our daughter came home one day, and she said, "My teacher told me I wasn't doing it right." That was the end of that conversation. We had a little chat with the teacher. That idea that you're not doing it right is just total nonsense. Right? And so that idea that in every one of us is that capacity, and I'm going to show you that you can do it, even if you think you can't. And we're going to do it right now. So, first of all, I want to just talk about the kind of three secrets of sketching. The first is to swallow your pride, that perfect is the enemy of good. Right? It's not about getting it right. Right? You don't need to get it right. It's just about capturing something. It's just about capturing an idea. Right? It's not, you don't have to get everything, you're just getting something. Right? So don't worry about getting it right. The second is to understand where you are in the process. Right? So you're not at the end. And a lot of people think, when I say sketching, they think it's got to be it's about how well you can render a visual image of something. Can I draw a picture of something accurately? Not at all. A sketch is a low-resolution idea, fast and cheap. It's just about capturing an idea. Right? Could be anything. Right? So it's gesture, not detail, idea, not form, relationship, not scale. Don't try to do too much. Detail comes later. Right? So you're not worrying about detail. It's just about gesture. Right? And third is iteration. Right? The real kind of genius of sketching is quantity. You're going to do lots. And I'll give you the best example of it. Frank Gehry is maybe the best architect in the world. He also does the most sketches. If he's so darn good, why is he throwing so much work away? Why doesn't he just get to the point and do it right? Because he's awesome. And he does the exploration and the sketching and the mistakes, and he does it over and over again, and he throws it away, and he throws it away, and he throws it away. He does block sketches and paper sketches and metal sketches, and he does sketching, more than any other practice I've ever worked with. And he throws them all away until he gets it right. Yeah? So it's not about perfect, it's about quantity. And quantity liberates you for invention. Knowing that you're going to do lots means this one doesn't matter. I can try something. Right? And so that kind of liberation is key to the practice. So let's do some. Everybody ready? Okay, I'm going to strike a pose. You may recognize it from a famous sprinter who I'm often compared to. So sketch me. Okay, I'm only going to hold it for a few seconds. Okay? Now hold them up in the air. Now see, everyone can do it. And you'll notice that some people are kinder than others. Now, let's do it with our eyes closed. Okay? So I want you, with your eyes closed, so make sure you got the paper in the right place in front of you and you know where it is, so you don't draw on yourself. We're going to sketch again. And this time, I want you to draw me a camel. Okay, with your eyes closed. Okay, hold them up. Hold them up. So turn them around, turn them backwards so that everyone can see them. Now, as you can see, not only can you do it, but you can do it with your eyes closed. And now, I would admit that some of them test the camelness of camel. But what is interesting is that almost everyone, I mean, so far in all of, we've done this a lot, in all of our tests, people always draw the camel in profile. Right? They never draw the camel face on. They never draw the portrait of the camel. They draw the camel in profile. Because you have in your mind a huge file of images. You have a huge file of silhouettes, a huge file of diagrams, of little things that you can access quickly. I mean, it takes seconds. And what happens when you do this in a few seconds is that we see in a few seconds 150 ideas about what a camel looks like. Right? So instead of doing one at a time, we can distribute the problem, look at 150 ways of thinking about it, and very, very quickly share those ideas in a group. So you have a methodology, you have a technology of sketching that can produce results super fast. So remember I said low resolution ideas, fast and cheap? That's what you want to, that's what sketching is about. When we work with companies like Disney Imagineering, right, they say that a problem is $1 in the shop. I mean, $1 on the board, $100 in a shop, $1,000 in the field. Right? So if you're in paper, I can solve that problem for $1. If I'm solving the problem in the field, it's $1,000. So this is super powerful. It's super fast, and it's social. Right? So we all saw them immediately. So that's how powerful sketching can be. Whoops, we did that already. Now, I want to do one more thing. Sketch 75%. Okay? Can you sketch 75%? You all know how to do it. Sketch 75%. Okay, let's hold them up. There you go. So what you see, if you turn around so other people can see them, right? So 75%. So there's a lot of different ways of doing it, right? Some people. So Pac-Man is the common denominator. The pie graph. It's very common. But I saw some other ones that are the kind of bar graph, right? Too. Some people have done they take they make the whole page 100% and they draw a line that bisects the page, turning it into 75-25. And what you see, and other people have actually sketched out the word 75%. Right? So you realize that there are different mindsets, different minds. There's a textual mind, a mind that is oriented to words, that thinks typographically. There's an abstract mind that sees the thing as an object. And there's an image mind that sees it as a Pac-Man. Right? So you can actually, and you can explore, you can develop those things as part of your practice. It's when you really start to think about sketching, if there's one thing I could do in my practice always, it's get our folks to be better at sketching. Right? Like give them better sketching techniques. And then I want to end with this, the last principle, work on what you love. And for me, this is, as I said, this is maybe the most important one. You know, when I was very young, when I first started working, I had this kind of really weird image in my mind that there was, you know, if you imagine the planet, that around the planet there was a thin, thin filament around the whole world. And in that thin, thin layer, there were particles. And the particles were very, very far apart. And those particles were people. They were the people that I needed to do my work. I needed to learn from them. I needed to help them. They needed me. I was the perfect person for their work. I was the one really who was best suited for them. They didn't know that. They'd never heard of me. They didn't know I was the right guy. But they were the ones that I was searching for. And I realized that I needed to find those people in my life. Now, this was 40 years ago. So this was long before the internet. And back then, it was a lot harder to find those people. But I determined I would do that. I determined that in my life, I would do what was necessary to find those people. And I realized that in that thin layer, the only message that worked was truth and beauty. That you had to put out a pure signal. Right? That the only way they would find me is if I put out a pure signal of what I wanted to do. I had to do my work as close as possible to what I wanted to do in my life, so that they would eventually find me. And I had to do it for a really long time, because it might take them a long time for them to find me. And I was very fortunate. I found one in Toronto. I found a couple in New York. I found one magical one in Toronto, and I married her. And she found others for us. And I found some here in Sydney recently, who are really extraordinary, who are part of this extraordinary place, who are kind of opening up new worlds for us. And I think they can open up new worlds for you as well. So that's what I have to offer today. Sure. Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Work on what you love. And as Bruce said, we've been working together on this project Massive Action Sydney, which is kicking off on Monday, and we're so excited to have this incredible opportunity. We have a few more minutes. I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions, or do we want to ask Bruce to sketch something and see what that looks like? Or does anybody have any questions or thoughts? Yeah.
I guess it's what about when doing what you love contrasts with what the rest of the world or what society wants you to do? Because obviously there's the whole concept of fitting in with society and what society is like nowadays with especially business, the economy, inflation, money. It's really difficult to kind of coordinate what you love to do, which is such a good thing, and I think it's so important. But with everything practical, I guess I don't want to call doing what you want to do impractical, but I just want to kind of get an idea of how you can make it.
Did everybody hear that question? as a summary, it's like, it's great working on what you love, but how am I going to pay the rent? Bruce.
Well, I think it's a great question, and that's why this principle is a principle. Because what I realized was that whenever I gave a lecture, that was the question that students wanted to answer. Because they saw that I had somehow managed to construct a life of ideas and beauty and love, and figured out how to pay the rent. And I'll tell you how I did it. I lived very modestly for a very long time. I lived like a student as long as I possibly could, in order to allow me to do the work that I needed to do. And so I didn't care about anything else. So I didn't care about all the things that you mentioned about fitting in or all those things. I wanted to do my own work. And in the end, my life is richer than I ever could have imagined. Like, I've had the most extraordinary adventure. I can't imagine a richer life. I'm richer beyond my wildest dreams. And I just have the most beautiful life I could ever have hoped for. And also, not terrible financially as well. And the reason is that I believe that when you align your passion and your work, you create the most value. And that's where the biggest opportunity is. So the sooner you can get that alignment, the better. That's where you're gonna contribute the most. Like when I work, I mean, Bisi and I, we never stop. Like we just work, we work all the time because we're just constantly trying to figure out how to solve these problems. And the problems are the most vexing problems in the history of mankind. What more could you ask for as a designer, as an opportunity to contribute to the world? And those problems are also the biggest business opportunities in the history of mankind. So you also have the opportunity to create wealth on a scale that has never been seen before. So I think that I would privilege focusing on what you love and let the other things line up behind it. And I can tell you that I had two extraordinary mentors. Mr. Jack Smith, when I said I had to go to stay an extra year in high school so I could get into college, the guy that I worked with that year, the man that led that program, was a man named Jack Smith. And he took me into his program. He was 65 years old. It was his last year of teaching. He allowed me to be in there for a year. He taught me, he introduced me to all these incredible things. When it came to the end of the year, I was printing the commencement address, the little booklet for commencement. And we were down to the deadline, and I had to come in on the weekend, on a Sunday, and print it. And I had a little one-color Heidelberg press, and I was printing it. It was a 4-color printing job, one color at a time. It was very technically challenging. And I said, I'm gonna come in and do it. It was Father's Day. And I said, don't worry about it. I got it. I know how to do it. You taught me how to do it. And he said, no, I'm going to come in and help you. So he came in on Father's Day. And I took the time to say, you know what? I've had the most amazing year. It's completely changed my life. I can't imagine ever having this again. It's been wonderful. And he said, look, just focus on the work. Do the work you love. And everything else will line up behind it. The money will be there. The opportunities will be there. It'll work out for you. And 20 years later, I had the same advice from Frank Gehry, because I had been really successful very young. And Frank took me aside and he said, Bruce, almost no one I know has survived what's happening to you. Almost everyone who's had the exposure that you're having, it's ruined them. And they've been they've been destroyed by the exposure. And I want to tell you, focus on the work, do what you love, and everything else will line up behind it. And it was like he was literally saying exactly the same words as Frank Gehry, as Mr. Smith. And so, I think that advice, for me, that kind of mentorship from both of them was so important. And it's the same message I have for you. Do the things you love. Like, make that decision to do what you love, and let the other things line up with it. Like, privilege that. It'll create the most value for you and your life, and for the rest of the people, for the world around you as well.
Bruce, thank you so very much. Shall we give Bruce another round of applause?
Thank you.